Hi, it's Sandy Parker, and welcome to Crafting for Almost Everyone. I wanted to show you today something we could do with the things that come out of your dies. Like, you normally would use the shape that the die cuts, but you have all these little hearts left over, and I thought, why not make a card with the outside scrap of what comes off of your the leftover from your paper pad, and the pieces that pop out of the inside. So with that being said, we're going to start with a piece of Recollections cardstock that's a heavyweight, 110 pound. It's 5.5 inches across by 4 1/4 inches tall. That's an A2 size card. And I already started gluing my hearts together, but I want to kind of show you what my thought process was with this. Don't cut apart, if you have a piece like this, don't cut it apart, because when you're using your paper trimmer, it's going to be easier to trim this if it's still in one piece. And what I mean by that is, if you have just a little scrap left, a little teeny tiny, like let's say I just had this length left, you wouldn't be able to cut it really easily because it's hard to get it straight in your paper trimmer. But if you leave it as in the shape it's in, even though the center is gone, it'll be easier for you to trim. So what I thought I would do is cut, first let me do 5.5 inches so that we have the length of our card. And I'm just going to cut that little piece right there so I know how long that's going to be, and we're going to leave that in. We're going to leave that in the shape it's in, so that we have the piece as big as we can to trim, like I said. And then I'm going to make this 3/8 of an inch. Should I make it? Maybe I should make it bigger. Maybe I should make it 1/2 of an inch. I think I'm going to make it 1/2 an inch. I'm talking to myself because you know I like to do that when I do cards. We're going to go with 1/2 inch, and we still should have enough to do 1/2 inch on this. And if you put your trimmer, if you put your blade into the center when you have a little bit of paper left, let me show you that again. I'll explain it. If you have this little piece and you're going to cut it, sometimes if you start at the top or the bottom, you'll tear it. But if you put your blade into the center of your piece, like let's say right there, and you push down, then you can get better leverage, and you can trim easier. So that's just a thought for you. So I have a bunch of little pieces trimmed off now. I think we're in good shape. As far as the card, the point of the card, it's not really going to be a Valentine's Day card, but it's going to be more like a hello card. And I just thought it would be fun to kind of walk through how to do something with scraps. And so the scraps we're using are from 2 different pieces of paper. And when you do this, you're just going to put your wet glue up in this top corner right there, and then you're going to lay your other heart right on top of that and make sure that it's lined up. Once I get 3 or 4 in a row, I'll show you how to make sure they're straight. But for now, it's easier just to do it this way and just kind of get your row going. It might look like there's a lot of glue there, but it really isn't a ton of glue, and it will dry clear, so it's not going to be a problem if it squirts out from underneath. So the way you want to make, if you want to make sure that you've got a straight edge, is you just take your ruler and you lay your ruler right underneath what you're doing. And I'm only going to show you a few more of these because I think you got the gist of it. I think you've got the gist. I'm going to continue on and make my full row, and I'll be back. Our next step is going to be to make a layered piece for our bottom section and our top. We're going to make we're going to use the pieces I showed you before, and I'm going to put tear tape on the back of this just to make it easier for me to lay it down and center it. Sometimes you have a little trouble centering pieces like this, so I'm going to try and use this tear tape to make sure I do it. And the other problem I sometimes have is that my paper will shift. So I'm going to put a little piece, well, a little roll of washi tape underneath it, because if I have a little problem with it, it won't matter. But I'm going to put a little piece of washi tape, like a donut. I'm going to put it underneath, like that, and that'll just hold that in place while I work with it. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my ruler again, and I'm going to line my ruler up so my edge is straight. And just do this slowly. And because your paper is attached to that washi tape, you won't have any problems with it moving on you. And there you go. So then we're just going to snip this little edge off. Then we're going to take our other piece. Same thing. We're going to lay down our washi tape, put our paper on it, make sure that we get it straight. We're going to put our tear tape on the back of our little piece, making sure that this will stay well adhered. We'll be ready to roll. And when you glue down your hearts, you could use tear tape, you can use wet glue, you can use tape runner, you can do whatever you want. I just was kind of giving you some ideas. And that washi tape really does help. It also, afterwards, you can pick up some of your little pieces of confetti. So that is that piece. Let me trim off that edge. Okay. So I think at this point all we need to do is, I have a die cut that says Thinking of You, that's very, very, very delicate, and I'm just going to pop out a couple of the little pieces that are left behind. Okay, in order to glue down my Thinking of You, I'm going to use my Xyron. And if you don't have one of these, they're really a handy tool because they turn everything into a sticker. And all you do is you pull the paper from one end, then you just rip it off, and then you're going to want to push down really heavily on this to make sure that the adhesive attaches to the back of the word Thinking of You. Now sometimes you'll lose your little dots for your eyes when you do any kind of die cutting, and what I do is I use this little, it's a little teeny tiny hole punch, and all I do is I punch out a couple of teeny tiny little circles like that, and then I'll just put a little bit of tape runner or wet glue on the back, but it make sure that you have the two eyes will be the same dots. Okay, let's start thinking about how we want to put this together. Do we want to vote? I think we should vote. Don't you think voting would be a good idea at this point? Or should we layer this on that piece and make it have a little bit more substance? I kind of like that. Let me see if I have more of that scrap. Oh, that's a different one. I trimmed out a bunch of things, so let me see which pieces, if I can come up with a couple duplicates that we could back these on, and we'll go with it. So now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to layer up my third layer, and then I'm going to put that on foam tape so that we end up having a really nice dimensional element to our card. I put this on that piece of washi tape so that it would be nice and secure, so that when I put this paper down on it, I won't have problem with it being uneven like that. And I just take that off. You don't need it anymore. Then let's decide how we want to design our card. I think because of the way these will take up so much space, that we'll probably put our heart in the center, and then I might run Thinking of You above it or below it, somewhere in that section. So that's my plan right now. So let's put our foam tape on the back of our strips, and hopefully I'm going to run this as close to the center as I can so that you don't see that foam tape, and I'm also going to snip it a little bit away from the ends so that it doesn't show up there either. You don't really want to see it on the ends or underneath if you can avoid it. Because it's white though, and our card is white, it's going to make it not as big a deal, where normally it will show up really, really badly and you'll be like, oh, I hate that look. Let's put these a little bit from the bottom, maybe 1/4 of an inch from the bottom, and then we'll do the same thing, 1/4 inch from the top. And again, start your tear tape a little bit away from the edge, and then we'll cut it a little bit from the edge. That way you won't be able to see it on the edges, and this will really give it some good dimension. And I think when you put some dimension on oh, that's stuck. I think when you put dimension like this on a card, it really adds to the interest. To me it does anyway. I don't know about everybody else, but for me, I think it adds interest. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to turn it around so I kind of have an idea of where I started from the top as far as distance, so that it's not too far off. Let me look and see. I didn't really lay it down, so I can move it up. I need to move it up a little, I think. Closer to the top. I think that might be closer to the top. Let's see. Then we have to decide about our words. I should have done them in a different color and made it so that you could see them better, and then I could have layered them on top of that. But I think instead what we'll do is we'll just lay our thinking of you down as close as we can to the top part of our card. I don't know if you've ever done this before, but sometimes when you use a Xyron, you'll get a little bit of leftover adhesive stuck to the back of it. It's easier for me if I can take it off now. So let's cross our fingers that we have enough adhesive on here. And this is a really long die cut, so when you do put this down, it's going to be tricky to get it straight. That's why I put my the top pieces in place first, so you'll be able to kind of have something to line it up with. Okay, so we have those two little dots that I popped out, and I'm just going to use some wet glue to adhere these. I'm going to put the glue on my card, and of course I put way too much. I'm just going to use my finger to get that off there. They are bigger than I want them to be, but that's okay. It's not that big of a deal. It does make the eyes stick out. If you're wondering about how to make, I could have used hearts, teeny tiny hearts, in place of them, but I don't know. I think those eyes are kind of funny. I'm just going to use wet glue for this, and then we'll just go down the. Hopefully I'm in screen. Right there. Now, because this is a big row, we have to be able to lay something on them to make them stay in place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold them for a second and see if I can get them to lay down. But there's so many points and loops on this that you don't want to have it not stick down and have one of them kind of flapping in the breeze. It's not bad. Then we'll just trim off these ends, and I'm going to stick one of these in the inside, just as a little, as a little accent on the card, so that we have one more reminder of our little hearts. And it matches the ones in the front, and I'm just going to lay it in there, and then we'll show it to you in a second. I could put a sentiment on the inside. I don't think I'm going to, but I could. Then let me just snip off the edges of them so we get them out of our way. People have asked me, I have another really pretty stamp that I don't use, and people have asked me why I don't use it. So I'm going to use it on this one for you so that you know that I do have it, and I will be using it every once in a while. I had this custom made from a website, and it really it was labor intensive because I had to take an address stamp basically and revise it so that it looked like this. So here's the front of our card, and all I need to do now is do the envelope. I have this extra strip of the hearts that I forgot I had, and you know how that goes. I forget things half the time, and I'm gonna put those on the envelope. If you put anything on the outside of your envelope, make sure it's really well adhered, because you don't want it to come off in the mail and your postman won't be happy with you for doing it if it comes off. So what I'm going to do is just make sure my glue goes to the tips like this. Just run my fingers over all of it, just making sure we don't have any spot that's not glued. So there's our card and its envelope. I hope you enjoyed this, that you'll give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And now when you have a die that you've cut out and you have all these excess pieces coming out of it, you'll know exactly what to do with it. I hope you enjoyed this, and please tell your friends about me on social media. I really appreciate that. And thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.